Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. I see people now recognize TNT as Dynamite Tesla and Sean Donnelly in the audience. Thank you for modding. Let's go. Again, a little bit late. Working all morning. A lot of other things are happening today, but we'll get on to that later. And hopefully I can knock out another one in about half an hour after this. But let's talk about Wednesday. Wednesday? Yes, Wednesday. 2.26 trillion. We're not out of the woods. Bitcoin is struggling at 61,000. And there's a bunch of headwinds, but there's also a bunch of silver linings which I'll break down, including in today's video. I will share the first part of many series where I've aggregated a lot of price targets, especially with the help of somebody very special who we'll talk about too. And we'll aggregate where Bitcoin could go in 2025 in this bull run from all the experts. So what I like to do is take a whole bunch of models and average them out and see exactly what we come up with. So that's very interesting. We'll talk about miner reserves making a new all-time low. Mr. 100 keeps stacking, and I know people think it's a centralized exchange wallet. No, I've made an entire video on it. It's not. 99% sure it's somebody like a sovereign or somebody who is a top 10 billionaire on the planet. Because of the action, the behavior, it's very clear it's not a centralized exchange wallet, which I've analyzed them all. Trust me. We'll talk about how Asians' Bitcoin supply doubles, the predictions, and the yen pooping the bed, and how BlackRock owns half of Epoch 5. Again, crunched a lot of numbers, 34 nuggets. Let's go. Not financial advice, just a crazy guy on the internet. And a big thank you as well to Zeno. Just saw you there. And CERN Dragon and CERN Dragon again. Appreciate you all. Let's get back to business. Bitcoin news time. First of all, Mr. 100 keeps on stacking. Now, what's interesting about this is they did sell back on the 3rd of June. They sold 490 Bitcoin, but they stacked all that back and more. Heavy stacking. Mr. 100 is back to stacking 100 to 300 a day, and we like to see that. So this is kind of offsetting some of the pressure. And Mr. 100 has gotten a lot better at DCAing. A lot better. So is Mr. Saylor, in fact, as well. This is hilarious. And I just love this quote. Shout out to Sanjay as well for getting it to me. From Alex Gladstein. Germany selling large amounts of Bitcoin for euros. And that it can print means they can print it to infinity, and they will. We'll go right up there with ditching nuclear power in exchange for relying on Putin for the fuel as the biggest self-inflicted wounds of the 21st century. I call it trading an IceCube for Bitcoin. It's brilliant. But Germany is not the only stupid government out there. USA doing the same thing. They're saying, well, Germany's selling their Bitcoin. We should sell it too. MartyParty broke this first, and he shared a link. I dug into it. The US government, literally an hour ago, sent about 3,940 Bitcoin to Coinbase. And that took a little bit of digging. Viciously, good to see you, buddy. If you look at this, this is $240 million worth approximately, sent to Coinbase Prime, originally seized from a narcotics trafficker by the name of Banmeet Singh. So this is way back in the day, 10 plus years ago, when Bitcoin was used for that. But the criminals now figured out Bitcoin is the worst thing you could use for crime because it's so easy to trace. 10 years ago, they didn't know that. Anyway, Banmeet Singh lost his Bitcoin. Government's now selling it. And a little bit of good news regarding government selling from Adam Cochran. The fact that they only sent 4,000 Bitcoin and are using Coinbase Prime means it's going to be very slowly auctioned off over ages. That's actually a good outcome compared to the alternative, dumping it all at once, which would dump the market. So again, positive, bit of silver lining there. Okay, I'll share some more too. Another piece of great news is Julian Assange, the OG of Bitcoin. He's been promoting Bitcoin since it was at $10. He is gladly reunited with his family in Australia. And some anonymous Bitcoiner donated 8 Bitcoin to cover his private jet costs to Australia. Who is that? Well, you have a lot of grifters that will probably take credit for it, but I think we know who it is. Jack Dorsey probably paid for it. The former founder of Twitter and Square, the block. I still call it Square. I still call things their old names because it's When you're used to talking about something for 10, 15 years, it's hard to shake it. Anyway, looks like safe passage is through. And that is from Jack. He probably paid for it. So I am glad Julian got there alive and well. You know, planes can sometimes drop out of the sky, especially if they're made by certain manufacturers. So it's always nice these days to see that a plane can land carefully. And I'm very happy to be earthbound in my retirement. Let's go. WikiLeaks. Back to Julian. In 2014, Julian called Bitcoin the most interesting thing on the internet. Aha. Back then, a single Bitcoin was about $200. Today, it's 61,000. And Bitcoin actually took donations in Bitcoin. They pulled in about 4,000 Bitcoin, according to records. We're not sure. John Bambanek, I think, calculated that. And it's about $250 million at today's prices. And Julian Assange and Bitcoin were perfect bedfellows, both anti-establishment at their core. And the currency gave the activist a perfect financing tool to resist government control, operate globally and secretly in his mission of truth, getting the truth out there. And again, I'm big on truth. I'm big on Bitcoin. So don't hate me for that. If you prefer a regime that doesn't like truth or Bitcoin, that's okay. But I like Bitcoin and I like truth. So pick your sides. All right. So things get very heated out there on Twitter sometimes. I just want to get that out there. All right. Now, Vanguarded are still dumb. I call them Vanguarded. That was the nickname we gave them when they were protecting investors from not having access to the Bitcoin ETF, despite the fact the morons didn't know that people could buy things like MicroStrategy, etc. Anyway, this is from Walker. Breaking, CEO of Vanguard calls Bitcoin a stable asset like gold. Confirms Vanguard does not steer clients towards stable assets, implying preference for unstable assets. You know how they make money? Index funds, mutual funds, okay? Not much money to be made, not much grift on the Bitcoin. So enjoy your unstable assets, everybody at Vanguard. And I know that tens of thousands of people left the Vanguarded organization when they turned their back on truth. Truth is my new nickname for Bitcoin. Just coined it right now, live. Let's get into the charts. A lot of cool charts today and some good data. Just to put things in perspective, by the way, okay, because people are freaking out. This is the best June ever by far. And this is from Libertarian. This is the price of Bitcoin going back to 2011 on the 25th of June. And you can see $18, $6, $100, etc., etc. But we are having by far the best June ever in the history of Bitcoin. So if you take into account previous cycles and people saying, oh, we've topped out and performance not good and everything else, just look at this chart. It'll put things in very, very solid perspective. A year ago, 30 grand, double since then. And 18 months ago, it was at 15,000. Now it's 61, so it's not too bad. And another fun, this chart may agitate some people, but hey, the current inflation rate of Bitcoin is 0.85%. If you calculate the inflation rate of Ethereum right now from the Ultrasound Money website on a 1-year basis, everybody, the inflation rate for Ethereum is now 0.877%. So ETH is not only not deflationary, but the inflation is higher than Bitcoin right now. I don't know how long this will last. It could go down, it could go up higher. It all depends on how much the chain is actually used. But I thought that was a very interesting statistic, how they are almost matching. It would have been perfect if they were both at the exact same inflation rate. Now, Bitcoin as well falls to very pessimistic levels. This is from SentimenTrader. And every time, it's a bit of an eye chart, but every time you see the sentiment tanking to extremely pessimistic levels over the past 10 years, counterintuitively, this has generally been a pretty good buy signal. Every time it dips, afterwards it goes up. Sometimes it goes down. It depends on where you are. But normally, when people are most frightened, similar to pessimistic, fearing greed, it's a good time to buy. That's probably why Mr. 100 is buying. And others too. The ETFs reversed. We'll get to that in a minute as well. Anglo Blackson, thank you for coming. Let's talk about hardness. This is from the top and bottom indicator. The Bitcoin miner reserves hit yet another all-time low. I shared this when they hit the 14-year low a couple of weeks ago, but boy, it's just tanked even further. Bitcoin miner reserves dropped to their lowest level again in 14 years. And miners are holding the least Bitcoin on their balance sheets since the beginning of time. They are nearly out. By my calculations, about 163,000 is what they hold across all the miners, excluding, people always get confused about this, you could argue Satoshi was a Bitcoin miner. He has 1.04 million Bitcoin. It excludes that in our model. I want that to be very clear. And speaking of the top and bottom indicator, while I was in there, we are still very yellow. So the best times to stack are blue, light blue, this lime green, yellow. And then you got to start being a little bit careful when we start getting orange, and dark red. So we are still in the safe middle of the road. And in full disclosure, I bought Bitcoin under 60K a few days ago because it's a good price. It's better than holding fiat, as we know. And we are now in the 6th major correction since the bear bottom. This is another construed silver lining. Every one of these corrections is ballpark 20%. We are now number 6 in the bag. We had one very, very recently as well when we came off the highs, and then a little bit of a rebound, and then we're making this double bottom again. Not quite as low as last time, but still, if you like charts, the fact that we have had 6 corrections, also a good sign, because we know what happens after a correction in a bull market. The price goes up. That's not very difficult. And this is also interesting from the team at Glassnode. Asia supply hits all-time high. That rhymes. And this is echoing the 2017 bull run pattern. Basically, Bitcoin supply in Asia has doubled, and the exact same thing happened in 2017. And it highlights a couple of things. One, the region has a big impact on Bitcoin price. Also, Bitcoin supply in Asia has risen from about 4% to over 8% by mid-May, aligning with Bitcoin's price to over 70,000. Basically, when the Asians start buying, it pumps the price last couple of weeks. And historically, Asia's Bitcoin supply changes have aligned with major price movements, similar to 2017. And we'll see if this pattern repeats. Often they do, but some of the traders in places like Korea really know what they're doing. And now we've got Hong Kong on board too with their ETFs, so a lot of goodness. Now let's get into some price predictions. I was just literally right before, why I'm a little bit late, Danny Marques tweeted me on X, and he shared this great little slide. I've seen it before, but I decided it is an important visual, and it's a good time to share with people. So what he did is pulled in all the industry-wide Bitcoin price predictions, and here they are on the table. So first of all, we have over different times, different prices. And rather than have a look at this eye chart, I decided to take his chart and turn it into a visual. And that's this. This is the price target. And I'm going to be adding my models to this over time and see how they compare. And I've been accumulating a whole bag of different models, like if X% of the top 10 money center banks allocates half of 1% to Bitcoin, all of these types of things, I've got them all, and I will build them into this, and we'll make this very robust out to 2032. But here, this is the analyst. So at the bottom, you've got some names that you may know: Pantera, Matrix Port, Bitquant, Standard Chartered, Tim Draper, JP Morgan, Max Kaiser, Nick Foster, Peter Brandt, The Mooch, Coin C Codex. ARK doesn't have a prediction out for this particular timeline, 2025. Then you got Bitwise and Alliance Bernstein, Fundstrat, and Chamath. And you add all those up. That's the interesting part. You get to a price target from all these so-called experts of about $164,500. So we'll see if we get that high. Not sure we will, but it'll be interesting to watch nonetheless. My targets for next year are a little bit lower, but again, we'll see. I'm going to bring in my models, my assumptions, and also other assumptions that could play out into the future too. And we'll continue to bake this out as new information comes on board. In addition, we'll do other price targets out for different time zones. I think out to 2030, 2032, as well as, what's the other price zone, 2028 to 2030. So if for those people that need to be out of the rat race by, say, 2028, 2030, it'll be interesting for you to look at. So I promise that is coming soon too. And a big thank you as well to Danny for pinging me. And he can be found on Twitter with the handle up there at Informant. Now, considering the governments are selling, I thought it would be interesting to share this from Crypto Quant. The US just sold nearly 4,000 Bitcoin, as I covered, but it's not likely to impact the market because Coinbase Prime has handled 20 to 50,000 Bitcoin in sell-side liquidity daily during spot ETF inflows and about up to 15,000 daily in spot ETF outflows. So I think Ki Ju is sharing this because he is tired of government selling FUD. The market's big enough. It can absorb it. Okay? It's really big. It's really big. And I'll talk about how big one player is already in just 115 days. Another bit of macro news too. The dollar yen tanks to over 160 yen to the dollar. We had a feeling it would happen, but this is the lowest level since 1986. That's a long time going back. And the Japanese government intervened to halt the weakening yen. They saved it or was going to spiral to 180 yen to the dollar. They sold about $60 billion of US dollars and bought $60 billion of yen. Ta-da! It's called propping up. They're melting IceCube. I hope they're not standing under it because they're going to have the perpetual drips of water coming on them. And again, all fiat goes to zero. And we're watching another simulation from a major economy hitting the wall live and propped up artificially. Yeah, craziness. And not just the Japanese, but the Chinese are also dumping US Treasuries. And the relationship between the yen and the 10-year is not spurious, but you can see here the red line is the amount of foreign holdings of US Treasuries, and red line is China. And they have been dumping hand over fist as quickly as they possibly can, way off the highs. I think now they have, can't quite see that number. Let me see if I can pull it up. I can't remember it. About $700 billion worth of treasuries left. And in today's world, when we talk in trillions, 700 billion isn't very much. Don't forget there'll be a Bitcoin only playlist at the very end of this video. You'll see it there. Let's talk about the ETFs, what I call Bitcoin black hole time. I'll explain why I call it that as well in a second. Day 115 in the bag. What's good about this is after 1.5 billion being out in 11 days, guess what? We had a positive day. 31 million. I'll take it. This is what it looks like. But one of the things I do want to talk about before we get into the rest is ETFs now hold 868,000 Bitcoin. 868,000. It's going to be 1 million Bitcoin soon. And if you look at the amount of issuance from Charts BTC here for Epoch 5, what we're in right now, that is 656,000. Sorry, not 650, 656. So basically, think about this. The ETFs hold 132% of Epoch 5 issuance in a very short window of time. But you know what's even more stunning? BlackRock. This blew me away, okay? BlackRock own half. Excuse the crude AI graphic. BlackRock owns half of Epoch 5 issuance. Okay, i.e. 4 years of Bitcoin issuance. And they stacked half of that issuance in just 115 days. That is a special statistic. This is what the chart looks like. Macro update, you can see Fidelity went positive after being negative from the ETF or the hedge fund carry trade being unwound for a long time. And of course, BlackRock does $1 billion in volume every day, but they haven't stacked up one Bitcoin at all. In how long? Let's have a look at this because I forget. Over the last, let's count this up. Over the last, let me see. 102. Let's call it 13 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the last 13 days, they stacked nothing, despite having $1 billion in volume every day. B-Man, thank you for coming. So that's bonkers. But they also have half of all the issuance that's going to happen over the next 4 years in 115 days. That's probably the most stunning statistic, one of the most stunning statistics I've come across this year so far. and you'll only hear it here on this channel. Let's look at the positive day after record-breaking negative outflows. 10 of 11 days negative in a row. We never had 8 straight. Boom. That went positive. Thank goodness. So a little small yay for that. And 502 Bitcoin were taken from the system, considering daily issuance 450. Not too bad. Mr. 100 stacking as well, and probably a bunch of other people around the world, as well as those that bought the dip, and as well as the big wallets that I covered yesterday. The players, the whales that are buying now, far exceed the size of the ETF action. So that's also important to note. Grayscale, the skunk that keeps on giving, still below trend. About 30 million out yesterday. But for Grayscale, it's not that much. But again, it's not zero. So hanging in there. That's the story for today. I'll be back in a short while. Thank you all for coming. Thank you again to the Muslim Chat and B-Man and everybody else. Hope everybody's doing well. Bitcoin is still at 61,000. Not a lot of action. But we did have action elsewhere too. So that's good. Thank you all for coming. Bye-bye.